All right, welcome back. You're watching The Take, folks. And now more on Hurricane Melissa as it continues to march on. NBC News reporting at least 7 hurricane-related deaths as a result of this massive storm. 3 each in Jamaica and Haiti, and 1 in the Dominican Republic. The 3 people in Jamaica died in accidents during preparations that were being made. After the storm continues through Cuba, it will head toward the Bahamas, where government officials are telling people to ensure their safety. Authorities say close to 1,400 people have been safely evacuated from the southern portions of the Bahama Islands there. As Melissa tears through the Caribbean, we're back to hearing about a landfall hurricane, a Category 5 storm. This category is from what's called the Saffir Simpson scale. It ranges from 1 to 5 and is based on the sustained wind speeds. Now, a major hurricane is considered anything from a Category 3, 4, or 5. But that number doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't account for the rainfall amounts, flooding, storm surge, which often cases leads to most of that destruction. All right, we are looking at the atmospheric and oceanic folks down there. Welcome to the show, sir. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. What's your name?
Good morning. I'm Dr. Zachary Handlos. I'm a director of our undergraduate atmospheric oceanic sciences program here at Georgia Tech.
Gotcha. So thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate that. Your view is that we should probably update the scale, right?
Yeah, it's a complicated picture because historically we've used the Saffir-Simpson scale since about 1969. So it provides continuity in terms of, being able to understand how present hurricanes are rated versus past ones. However, the challenge is that the Saffir-Simpson scale only considers maximum wind speed. And certainly strong winds, like with Melissa, can be devastating and concerning. However, there are other hazards that come with this too. Inland flooding, storm surge, sometimes you can get tornadoes. And none of these are exactly factored into the Saffir-Simpson scale. So it may be worth, as a community, revisiting, do we need something that kind of incorporates all those 4 primary factors? Is there a way to communicate that in a scale that's kind of similar to the Saffir-Simpson scale?
So you're saying we're seeing more storms breaking that traditional model, right?
I think it's always been like that. It's just that the Saffir-Simpson scale, if you know something about the maximum wind speed, you can infer or correlate these other types of hazards. So with Melissa, for example, when people hear Category 5, they know, okay, this is going to be catastrophic. The winds are strong, but there's probably going to be strong storm surge, flooding, associated with that. But it's not technically encoded in the scale itself. In terms of, emergency management communication, communicating to society, it could be interesting to have a scale that maybe more clearly notes these other factors. Because sometimes you get these stories where people say, oh, I've survived a hurricane before. Even though these winds are bad, we never get the worst of it. But all it takes is one bad event where maybe you finally do get the winds, or maybe it's the inland flooding that's more destructive than the winds itself. I think a lot about Helene for Atlanta last year, where we didn't really have the bad winds here. We had 11 inches of rain or so in 48 hours, and that led to devastating impacts in our area. And of course, much more rain, in the Western Carolinas, where they had over 30 inches of rain. So I think, long story short, having some sort of scale that communicates these other factors clearly to the public could be really beneficial.
So what does that hazard index that you mentioned look like when you talk about the scale?
Well, it doesn't exist yet. I think this is something that's very much in the brainstorming stage, and no one is really taking any initiative, to my knowledge, within academia, the private sector, the government sector. But you hear chatter around the meteorological community that, okay, so we have the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's pretty good. We've used it historically. However, is it worth creating an updated scale? Well, there's challenges to this. One is that if you throw more factors into the scale, how do you make sure people understand what all this means to be firing off pages of text to people? They may not have the time or capacity to read through this. So how do you make it into like a single number? Maybe it's like a color scale or something like that, where green is best case scenario, red is worst case scenario. So these are all ideas that I think people could float around. The next challenge too is that who's going to take the lead or initiative to come up with a scale, something that everyone can agree on, something that's effective as a communication tool, and then is it something that we can actually use in forecasts moving forward?
Hey, that may be you. Maybe it's called the Handlos scale. Zachary Handlos, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.